How do you improve the memorability, engagement, and impact of your brand? You need to help your audience develop cognitive ease. Now, while the human brain only takes up 2% of space in our body, it actually takes 20 to 25% of our energy resources. So what would happen if your brand was to show up when your audience was tired, exhausted, or overwhelmed? Well, it depends on your actual brand. So if your brand makes it easy for your audience, then even when they're in a state of exhaustion or overwhelmed, they'll be able to understand your brand and take it on board easier. But if they're overwhelmed and exhausted, they then struggle to comprehend what your brand is, or you make it too hard for them, you're going to have one of two things happen. Either they're going to completely forget what your brand is and that it even exists, or you're going to leave a negative impact on them, and a long-lasting negative impact at that. Here are 4 ways to encourage a state of cognitive ease in your target audience rather than that sense of overwhelm. Prime your audience. So set up expectations for your target audience by building contextual clues with regards to your messaging, your timing, the location of your ads or your marketing, or where your brand's being portrayed, even down to the time that you actually post on social media or the time that you show up for a particular campaign or an event. All these things matter in terms of the context of how your audience will take in your brand. For certain brands, you can even target your audience based on the weather outside, whether it's a sunny day or it's a cold day. Depending on what your product or service is, the timing can be crucial in terms of how you advertise to your target audience and then the relationship they create with your brand. The more you understand your audience, the more you can develop these contextual clues and build that rapport with your audience, which allows them to be more receptive to taking on board your brand, the memorability side of it, the impact that it has, and actually how they engage with your brand long term. Be repetitive. So habituation happens when you are continually exposed to something over a long period of time. And there's actually scientific proof to show the more familiar you are with something, the more you're likely to like it. And with familiarity comes increased likability. So your audience, with the familiarity of your brand, will actually like it more over a period of time. But you need to be consistent across all touch points with your brand. This develops that familiarity, which increases likability, but it also increases recall and memorability and the impact you have and the awareness that you create around your brand. Those touch points want to be consistent continually through everything you do. If you can create opportunities for repeated exposure with your brand, whether that's through sponsorship ads, influencers, content, whatever it is where you can show up repeatedly, you'll actually increase this and hasten this effect. Just be careful not to go too far the other way and go too much retargeting and too much following around all over the internet, because it actually leads then to mistrust in your brand and a feeling of being followed around everywhere. So there is a fine balance with this, but you want to maintain consistency, you want to be repetitive, but you want to do it in a way that's authentic and actually makes sense for your target audience. If you've enjoyed the video so far, hit the like button below, and in the comments let us know which of the brands that you have seen a lot of recently but you've grown to love. Let us know in the comments below. Be clear. So a lot of brands are not clear on who they are, they're confused, they are not unified in their approach, and this causes confusion in your audience. The more confused you are, the more confused your audience is going to be, trying to place and understand what your brand does and how it fits into their life. Remember, the whole purpose of building cognitive ease with your audience is to reduce the mental capacity load your audience has in trying to understand what you do. So if you're confused and your audience is getting more confused trying to work out, they will just leave. They'll go and find somebody, another brand that can help them in the way that you can't, or that you're striving not to at this current time. So make sure you have clarity, you have focus, and that you're actually executing on that consistently, but in a very simple, clear way that people can take on board. Don't try and get too complex with the way that you explain stuff, the way you go across to people. It needs to be simple, it needs to be concise, it needs to be to the point. A great example of this is Apple. Think different. Nothing says Apple more than those 2 words. And they just epitomize that through everything they do. And one of the key drivers Steve Jobs wanted to with Apple computers was to make it simple. The whole point was simplicity. In a over jargon filled, complicated tech industry that was already there, to come in and build something that was simple, had a really easy user interface, and was completely different from what was the existing industry was a masterstroke. And think different is the way that came across. So if you can do that with your brand, if you can simplify your brand down, be really clear, understand it, and get across what you're trying to get across in a concise way, then you'll cut straight through the noise and you'll make it easy for your audience to take on board your brand. Make them feel something. So the way your audience experiences your brand is intrinsic to the way that they view you as a brand, but also the way they remember you, the way they tell their friends and family members about you as a brand. So one of the things you want to try and do is try and evoke the emotions that you want to in your target audience. And you can do this through lots of different ways, through your brand's personality. You can do it through the way your process is, your sales process, or the journey they go through. You can do it through customer service. You can do it through your employees, or the way that if you have a brick and mortar store, the way that your sales team talks to your potential customers when they're in the showroom or in the store. You can do this when you deliver a product. You know, maybe you have scent in the product, maybe you have the way you package it, maybe it's the way that you present yourself online. Whatever you can do to make your audience feel something is going to help you to be remembered. It's going to ease that memorability. It's going to help them to take you on board quicker and attach some positivity to your brand. Now you've learned a little bit more about how to help your audience to habituate your brand, take it on board and create that awareness and that memorability. One of the things you need to think about is where your brand is strong, where it's weak, and how you can improve it. We actually have a 4-minute brand power assessment, which will take you through 20 questions, and it will give you a customized report at the end, which will tell you where you're strong, where you're weak, and where you need to improve. And it will give you a percentage score out of 100, your brand power score. So if you're interested in that, the link is in the description below. If you'd enjoyed this video and you'd like to see more, please subscribe using the button below and hit the bell notification so that you can be notified every time a new video drops. Have a great week, catch up soon, and keep those brands unified.